Recording going. Make sure we capture this very important topic today. All right, so let's give one more minute. Jennifer, what's it like down in the South?
It's hot down here and very, very humid. It's typical August weather in beautiful sunny Atlanta. There's a reason they call it Hotlanta.
Yeah, right.
Typical afternoon pop-up showers periodically. I spent a couple of days at the beach last week, same thing. Hot, humid. Actually, no rain though for a couple of days, which was nice, but.
Well, nothing out of the ordinary then.
No, it feels very, very normal for this time of the year. Temperatures in the high 80s, low 90s, and humidity about the same level too.
Yeah, wow. Hot's hot. Well, perfect conversation we have today. I know there's a lot of kids going back to school if they haven't already, so this is a very good one. Let's go ahead and get started. We have people popping in now. So let me just start with a few housekeeping things. So as we welcome everybody to the Intrepid Spirits Huddle, as earlier mentioned, Dill and Susan are on the road today. So Jennifer Jordan coming in as our guest host today on a very timely and important conversation we'll be having with Patricia Houston from MMR about virtual learning and kids going back to school, and hopefully some tips and thoughts around what's been going on in that world. So looking forward to hearing that. Just a few housekeeping things. As you guys have questions throughout this conversation, please do throw those into the chat area so that we can ask Patricia as we get near to the end. Also, feel free to check out any of the ongoing questions and answers on the Facebook page, Intrepid Spirits, as well as any other previous episode. So with that said, Jennifer, I'm going to go straight over to you for a brief introduction of our guests today and anything else. So Jennifer, good to see you.
Hi, nice to see everybody. I was going to start, as is custom with our huddles, for Magellan, although it feels a little sacrilegious for me to be doing this. This is, for years, Dill's mantra to all of us, but I am in fact going to recite the Magellan quote for us all. The sea is dangerous and its storms terrible, but these obstacles have never been sufficient reason to remain ashore. Unlike the mediocre, intrepid spirits seek victory over those things that seem impossible. It is with an iron will that they embark on the most daring of all endeavors to meet the shadowy future without fear and conquer the unknown. And boy, every time I hear that every week, I feel like we are living that quote. We may not be circumnavigating the world, but my goodness, we are navigating through some very stormy waters. So while it feels weird to be reciting that in Dill's place, I'm honored to get to do my guest huddle hosting today. So as Josh and I were talking, I live in Cobb County, Georgia, and today thousands of families across the county start school. Originally, they were starting in a hybrid environment where you had the choice of in-person or online, and unfortunately, about 3 weeks ago, they determined it was all going to be virtual. So that is certainly some conquering their fears of the unknown. We had a school district just north of us that did start hybrid a week ago. They have closed 3 of the high schools temporarily because of COVID outbreaks. So we are all looking at shadowy futures right now with education, which makes today so timely. Back in May, Tricia was our speaker, and she talked about what we had been working on with capturing learnings from all of this disruption. And as a small case study, she talked a little bit about a very new project that we were just initiating on e-learning with some research that was just going into the field as she spoke in May. So today she's going to update us on the results of the research and talk about some toolkits that we created to leverage those results. And for those of you who don't remember, Tricia is a longtime Igniter. She started as an intern and moved into project work as a full-time person. And it is because of the Ignition world that she then went on to the University of Georgia to get her MMR degree, and she now does the best of both worlds, which is making research experiential. So I love working with her. And with that introduction, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jen. I think you're the one who's making the most fun. Ooh, are you guys hearing us?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'll try again.
I think Jennifer needs to go on mute.
Hey, Jen, if you want to mute first, maybe that'll help. Cool. All right, let's try that. That did it. Thanks so much. Cool. All right. So I've been thinking about this, right? Obviously, you know, I'm knee deep in it. We started last Thursday, but everybody's not knee deep in e-learning, right? Either your kids, because we're really focused on K through 12. Either you're empty nesters, you're past it, or maybe it's just not something that's really relevant to you right now. So what I want to challenge us all, while I'm going to mention all the things that Jen just said, talk about the project, but as I talk about it, I want to challenge all of us to think not just about how this applies directly to, you know, K through 12 education, but what we can glean from this research and this process that we've gone through that applies to what we're all experiencing. So the prolonged work from home period, the idea of training employees virtually, and even onboarding new employees virtually, right? Anything which you used to typically have a very high touch environment that is now being forced to be virtual, and that is very communications driven. So if education is not directly applicable to you, please just kind of think of that, you know, as we kind of go through this. So I'm going to share my screen. If Josh can give me permission to do so. I should have given you a heads up. So I will share my screen momentarily. But as we left April, we went into May, we did a couple of different surveys. We did both a teacher survey. We did an online national survey with parents, about just between 800 and 900 parents. And we also did what we call some online qualitative. So we got some video responses from parents. And what we found across all of these is there was three main gaps. And I bet you if you went and talked to an HR representative or somebody responsible for actual human capital and interactions within a company, they're gonna probably echo these three challenges. That the channels of communication certainly needed improvement. We did some also direct work with a school district here locally and found that when teachers were asked what did they need more training on as far as software, there was a list of about 80 different platforms across one school district, right? So consistency in what these tools actually are and how they're trained could certainly use improvement. Definitely expectation gaps. So setting those expectations clearly out front was not happening. And I don't think anybody's surprised to say that the learning quality suffered, right? Because we know both from the school district, from the parents also, that they understand that there was, you know, we were all in crisis. We all had to do what we had to do to get through the spring. So what did that mean for the different audiences? So the teachers, what were they really struggling with other than the fact that this was different? They basically overnight became content creators. They had to figure out how to create lesson plans that had to be ready much more in advance versus say showing up on Tuesday and being like, okay, we're gonna do science experiments today. And it's very hands-on and very in person. So you can do it quickly. That meant both the technology gap that I mentioned, but also just the preparedness, the being ready for it. And Jennifer and I talked about this a lot during the analysis. Also just doing it as a team. We found talking through teachers, they felt very siloed. And there wasn't a lot of group collaboration between say like the math department and the science department, or even all the math teachers. So as we can imagine, that's very similar to probably what we see in corporate silos or even in smaller organizations. Okay, now from the parents, they definitely felt a lot more burden in terms of what they had to do. And they didn't feel supported by the tools. So I think this is kind of one of those catch-22s, right? I think the parent side of it is probably the easiest one for us to understand, or the employee side of it, right? That when you get thrown into something new, you want to be guided. You don't want to feel like you're having to teach yourself how to do it. And I'm not saying it's perfect yet this fall on our first class call last Thursday, you know, there were several parents chiming in over the teacher to provide tech support advice. And I heard it in the teacher's voice, especially at the end of the call, because she read a book called First Day Jitters. And she said, you know, this year I think I had more jitters than I've ever had, because now she's teaching two audiences. She's teaching the students, and now she has parents way more engaged than she's ever had to deal with before, and in an uncomfortable environment as far as tech goes. Okay, so let me pop out of that. So what did we do with all that? So in the research world, and thanks Jen for actually bringing up going to Georgia, what they taught me at Georgia in the Master's Market Research program is you write a very succinct report with a very strong point of view up front, and you tell people what to do with it. And I kind of showed you something like that. Sure, we have more detailed documents, so I wasn't going to go through all of it today. But we can't stop there. And that's where the experiential comes in. And so our goal was really to try to, you know, make this go from theory into action. So this is available. I think I showed you guys last time. We have a website, elearnux.live. And this PDF is available here at the bottom. All I did was just click it and it opens. It's hosted in Google. But what's here is these are the things we've been talking about. So this upfront section kind of, sorry, it seems to be taking a moment to load. This upfront section kind of gets people grounded in the idea of what the project is. But what we wanted to do was take it further. So here what we put together is what we call take action worksheets. So part of it is a preparation, this whole get ready work stream, and then the let's go, so an implementation worksheet. Sorry, I know this is probably a little bit of an eye chart over screen share, but it's more the higher level that we need to focus on here. And did versions for both school and home. So again, as we think how this applies out of e-learning, it's, you know, it's the standard thing that we're really familiar with and experiential, right? You have checklists, you are prepared in advance, you are doing a lot of crisis planning, but a lot of these other work streams like HR, maybe that's not something they're used to, having to be such content creators in advance or checklist in advance. So from a school side, we put these into buckets of types of things. Let's actually go through the home one, because I think that's probably the more intuitive one. All right, so for home, you know, even something as simple as thinking ahead about specific workspace. And if you're thinking about it on the first day of school, that might be a bit too late. You know, how do you want to get your desk set up? How do you want to prepare yourself for success? It seems obvious. But if you don't actually maybe prompt some of these parents or students to think about it, the specific tools they're going to need, you know, make sure you do an audit of what those are, and actually sitting down and planning a routine. Obviously very important for, you know, the parents who are trying to integrate this into their work from home, and also plan for the what ifs. Okay. And then we gave some worksheets. This is not the only way you could skin this, but different things that you might want to have on tap. And then also a daily worksheet that you could use either per subject or for elementary school, just per day. You know, what are the main topics for today? How are we going to measure success? Additional resources and how to get help. And why this kind of framework and checklist, we think we only got started, right? This is where it gets, you know, I don't blame researchers for the fact that they stop at the point of view, because it can get overwhelming when you get into this resource space, because it's one, you think about how custom you could get, you think about how pointed you could get to certain, you know, situations and environments. And we plan to take this further. So there's a conference that we're involved in a couple of weeks called Big Design. And it is product designers, service designers, experience designers, and a lot of design students, which there's a lot of in Dallas. We're, you know, it's centered around SMU University and some other universities down there in Dallas, and SCAD as well, if you're familiar with that. And we're going to be working with them to essentially have an open call for help us design better resources. And we'll plan to post them all to the website as well. So we believe that with data available and a problem identified, that we can do better crowdsourcing of some of these actual, what we call take action kits versus just telling people what's wrong. They don't need to hear much more about what's wrong. They can sense it. So I will pause there. Let me come over here. Because pretty much most of this is captured here. We did add our kind of videos from parents, which are always helpful. We find these are great to kind of have people kind of humanize, the problem and the results. So I'm just going to play a very short clip. I think you guys should be able to hear it over the speakers.
So I feel like just understanding expectations, how long can a child sit in front of a computer screen? When do they need a break? Some sort of schedule that would just, help set reasonable expectations for children, parents, and teachers.
I would like some more videos to help parents with structure and helping with homework. Just any tools and tips that they could give us in either a video or a document, what the expectations are about how long the student should be spending on homework. All of this would be helpful, especially trying to help them with their homework and submit the homework into the school.
So it just makes sense to make sure that the parents and the kids understand what's being expected of them, give them more time to actually get the work done, and try to make yourself available to them. So that way, if they are struggling, they know, okay, once a week, we're going to meet up with the teacher virtually and go over any concerns that we have, and also try to make sure that a counselor is available in case the kids need someone to talk to.
Okay, excellent. So you can hear that just if you're a manager or a trainer, right? Where's that person I go to? How are those expectations set? So communication is so critical to do that in this world that we're in now. And what we're seeing and advising clients to do now is, we early on saw a lot of what we called hidden dissatisfaction in results for surveys or things. So if you looked at scores from e-learning from the county we partnered with, high satisfaction scores. And what really was below was all the stuff I just kind of shared in the video, right? So they're giving you grace, but I think we're really getting past a little bit of that period of grace for a couple of reasons, simply because we're definitely seeing a lot of this is here to stay, and we need to get past that temporary mindset. So I challenge you guys to think about some of these stopgaps that might have been put in place in your life and your business. What's going to be permanent? What do you need to go look back and go, okay, we just kind of did this really quick, but let's go readjust and say, hey, this might be here for a while. So how do we actually optimize it? Or we might decide, like I've heard of some restaurants, for example, who they did do the switch to delivery and just went, okay, we're getting out of the dine-in business. Maybe it means a true pivot. So really to just kind of look back and decide which way you want to go forward. So looks like we have some questions coming in, Josh.
Yes, we do. So we got a question from Mike, and thanks for sharing that, Patricia. So first question, I think this could kick off some more here. What training and education were the parents given over the summer break, if any? Is that something that you guys were tracking and monitoring as well?
We actually were hopeful that there might be more. So I will say the district that I'm in, which is Forsyth County in Georgia, they're pretty ahead of the game. But even as ahead of the game as they were, they couldn't get that ahead. And partially, I think that was because this year, not only were they trying to figure out how to offer viable online learning, they are a district that went back in person as well. And they're dealing with governor regulations. They're dealing with broader CDC guidelines. So their time was in a lot of ways split, I feel. So we'd had our standard open house, and we did have that initial call like I talked, but I think that is a great opportunity if districts, especially the ones that haven't opened yet, could get ahead of that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious, Patricia, where your head's at, and we got another question after this, but where do you see now, after some schools starting, we've had the spring to sort of be blasted with this, the summer to prepare, and now the fall going back. Where do you see this kind of going if you're making a prediction on, this fall semester, if you will?
Oh, in terms of how e-learning goes, or how?
Yeah, I mean, in
Okay.
general, how this whole process of e-learning, virtual learning, back to school, do you get a sense that it's getting better, or is this going to be a challenge as it is now for a long time?
It's hard to look too far in the future, but I think especially for the near term, the next 6 to 8 months, I think it's going to be a challenge. I think if we think just that far ahead, because like Jennifer mentioned, even right now, even the schools that are going back, I can imagine them totally pulling back and going, we should have went all virtual. And the districts that at least offered it are more prepared, and gave the option. So I think it is going to absolutely continue to be a challenge. And that's part of the reason I do think the mindset needs to shift to, this is here to stay. And even if, this is one thing that I talk a lot about when it comes to innovation, is because a lot of times for innovation, you think you need to solve for the average. You think you need to solve for the majority. So somebody might look at something like online learning and say, in the future, we're only solving for the minority. But I would argue that's okay. You solve for one, you still help many. So even if we're not in COVID times, you're helping those students who maybe do have to stay home in general because they're immunocompromised, or there's disabilities, or they get hurt. So you're solving other problems by doing these things that are seemingly fringe. I mean, not trying to extreme it, but I think it's here to stay. And
Right.
if you take that approach to it, it'll be better off in the short term and the long term.
Got it. Robert Howell has a question here about your research, and if you got into how to approach students that aren't able to access internet at home or face other challenges at home. Is that something that you guys saw from some of your research? Is that popping out to you at all?
So it did come up, and that's a great question, Robert. We weren't able to tackle it directly. We read a good bit about it, but it wasn't something that we were able to take on. We did make recommendations to the district we're working with about how they should consider doing things differently in that aspect, but it's definitely of interest to me, but it wasn't something we were able to take on in this scope right now. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's, we've seen and heard a lot of those problems. I know, Robert, it sounds like you have as well. Very interesting. So Patricia, where do you see your research here going? So what is the overall goal for all of this to come together? Are these teaching tools that you want to get out to the masses, or what is your intent with all the research, the great research that you guys are doing?
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh. So we want to continue to build on it. So customization, but we can't do it all at the local level. We want to encourage folks to actually take ownership of it at the local level. And so that's what the partnership, I think, with Big Design will help us spearhead, so we can get through more student networks, like college student networks, not meaning like K through 12 student networks, right? And to expand our kind of connections in with different school boards. Right now, we're not trying to bite off too much too soon. So I think in the invite it said we're looking for other Georgia schools that we might deploy monitoring surveys to. So our goal is to help them get ahead of it. And by continuing to show them how they can drive action in ways that aren't capital intensive, right? This isn't about you have to go spend a lot of money. It's just you need to put somebody on task for planning and getting ahead of it. So that's where we hope to go. We do want it to grow. And Susan actually encouraged me to reach out to David Perdue in his office, because he's been doing a lot around education, and maybe there's a partnership there. I don't know, but we'd welcome it. So
right, big goals. That's amazing. I think also to add on top of Robert's question, have you had any experience or any side research going into the field of special education? I think we hear on the news constantly how, this problem is bad enough just with regular school, but those that need more help and have special needs, has anything popped out to you there in that area?
We have more on, not at scale like we did with the surveys, but we're working directly with the special education director at Forsyth County. She's on the project team that we're working with, and that's of interest to me. You know, my sister was in special education all the way through high school, so I think that area is certainly, it's partially what you were talking about earlier about the students who don't have access to technology. It's solving for those few. So we don't think it necessarily requires a different approach to the research. It just requires different, you might be thinking different ways to activate it because you're dealing with a different audience. And that's one thing we've been very careful to. I know you guys are bantering in the comments, which is kind of funny about me getting my PhD, which I can guarantee you is not happening.
It's enough school for you.
But that said, we very much so bow to the fact that we don't have a PhD in education, and we have to look to the experts. We can be the process experts, but we cannot be the content experts, or the behavioral experts or the engagement experts, especially when it comes to very specialized things like special ed.
Yeah. That's rightly said. I know there's plenty of expertise out there. I think we're closing up. Jennifer, not sure if you have any closing thoughts. I know this is a project very near and dear to you, and you've been helping a lot here. Anything else we might want to throw out before we end today's huddle?
So I think the one question, and you touched on it in different places, Trish, but we've talked a lot about how the learnings from this project have more broad application. And I think my question would be, what's the one thing that you've seen from what we've been doing in the e-learning space that really has broad applicability to multiple audiences, multiple environments? What's something that we learned through this in the microcosm of e-learning that's bigger?
Yeah, and I know we're short on time, I'll give the real short answer. So there's two things. One is a process learning from the research standpoint. So a lot of times research tends to be very siloed and very, one data stream. So we learned how to do a bunch more collaboration and a bunch more kind of facilitation across different groups to kind of collaborate and bring all this together, which in the market research world tends to not always be the case, multiple data streams. So there's a process thing that we can bring to the industry. But in terms of other subject matters, I truly do think that it has a lot to do with this employee training and onboarding, since we are going to be in an extended work from home environment, because employee engagement could have already been a problem in your company, but it's going to be even harder now. And even from a mental health standpoint of being able to have a pulse on what's going on with your employees, this whole process would say you need a lot of quick touch-ins, which can help get ahead of some of those things. So I think the biggest opportunity is in kind of the HR area.
Totally agree. I think the home worksheets for like reorganizing your space and recommitting to having routines and things, I think that's a good reminder to all of us as we continue this. I work from home always, but even I sometimes get lazy and don't work from my desk. I work from my couch like I am today. So I think that's important. But that's it from us. We're inside our time. My dedication, if I had my 20 seconds, is because we do have all these kids going back to school, for people who are parents, be supportive of them because they're going back to really different situations than what they're used to. Be supportive of your friends who are parents. Recommit yourself working from home to trying to be positive and find ways to do it. And I guess that means we hip.
All right, guys. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Patricia. We'll see you next week. Hip, hip.
Hooray!
Hooray. All right. We'll see you guys. Have a great week.
Bye, everybody.